For 35 years, I was the invisible daughter, the one my mother forgot to praise, forgot to choose. So when I overheard her whisper to my husband at her birthday party, "My other daughter is prettier, you should choose her," I should have felt that familiar sting, but I didn't. I watched her manicured fingers grip his arm, her perfume heavy between them, her voice dripping with calculation. She had no idea who she was really talking to, no idea what he was about to show her. Have you ever watched someone destroy themselves without knowing it? The stories on this channel are created solely for entertainment, educational, and storytelling purposes. While some stories are inspired by real situations submitted by viewers via email, most details have been fictionalized, combined, or altered. My name is Rachel Hayes. I'm 36 years old, a vice president of operations at one of Boston's largest hospital systems, and for most of my life, I believed I was fundamentally unlovable. This is the story of how I discovered that everything I believed about myself was a lie, carefully constructed by the people who should have loved me most. I spent 30 years trying to earn love that was never available. It took losing hope to find peace, and finding peace to finally see the truth. I was never the problem. I was just surrounded by people who needed me to believe I was. My father, Thomas Hayes, was an electrician with calloused hands and a gentle voice. He died when I was 8 years old, fell asleep at the wheel driving to a job site. At least that was the story my mother told us. After he was gone, everything changed. My mother, Patricia, raised 2 daughters alone, and somewhere in that grief, she made a choice. My younger sister, Lily, with her golden hair and outgoing personality, became the center of my mother's universe. And I, the quiet one who looked too much like the man she had lost, became invisible. The favoritism wasn't subtle. When Lily turned 16, my mother threw her a party with 30 guests and a custom cake. She told everyone who would listen that Lily was going to be something special. When I turned 16, my mother forgot entirely. I mentioned it quietly at dinner, and she looked surprised, almost annoyed. She bought a grocery store cake the next day and said I never made a fuss about things, so she assumed I didn't care. I learned the lesson well. Wanting attention was shameful. My only value was being low maintenance, the daughter who never asked for anything. So I stopped asking. I threw myself into achievement instead. Honor roll scholarships, Dean's List, summa cum laude. Each accomplishment met with my mother's distracted nod before she pivoted to whatever crisis Lily was navigating. My college graduation, she didn't even attend. Lily had an audition that day. By my early 30s, I had built a career through sheer determination and 60-hour weeks. I never mentioned my salary to family. I had learned that my success made my mother uncomfortable, as if my achievements were a personal criticism of her favorite daughter's failures. Then came the phone call that changed everything. 5 years ago, my mother needed emergency heart surgery. The cost after insurance was $47,000, and Lily called me crying, saying the hospital needed a deposit immediately, or they would delay the procedure. I was in Seattle for a work conference, 3,000 miles away. The hospital required in-person payment. Lily was there, I was not. So I transferred every dollar I had saved over 8 years directly to my sister's account. My entire life savings gone in one wire transfer. I told Lily to make sure the hospital knew the money came from both of us. I flew home the next day and spent 3 weeks at my mother's bedside, managing her recovery, her medications, her appointments. When my mother woke after surgery and asked who had paid, I was standing in the doorway. I heard Lily say the words that would haunt me for years. She said she had taken care of it. She said not to worry about anything. She never mentioned my name. She never mentioned the $47,000 I had sent. I waited for her to correct herself. She didn't. And I trained since childhood to believe that wanting recognition was shameful, said nothing. During those long hospital days, I met a man in the cafeteria. He wore a flannel shirt and had kind eyes, and he asked me a question no one had ever asked before. He wanted to know what would make me happy, not useful, happy. I couldn't answer him. He gave me his card. Daniel Mitchell. No title, no company. Just a name and a number. I kept it without knowing why. I didn't know then that this stranger would become my future. And I certainly didn't know that my sister had already begun building a lie that would eventually expose everything. After I returned to Seattle, Daniel and I exchanged occasional texts. Nothing romantic at first, just two strangers who had shared something real checking in on each other. He would ask how my mother was recovering. I would ask how he was coping with losing his friend. Good days and bad days, he would say. Thanks for asking. This continued for almost a year before life got busy and the messages faded. I thought about him sometimes, that quiet man in the flannel shirt who had asked me what would make me happy. But I convinced myself it was just a moment, nothing more. Meanwhile, something was happening in my family that I didn't fully understand. At gatherings I attended, my mother had started introducing Lily differently. She would put her arm around my sister and tell people this is my daughter who saved my life. Lily would smile with practiced modesty and say she just did what any daughter would do. I sat in silence every time the words caught in my throat. What was I supposed to say? Actually, that was my $47,000. It sounded petty. It sounded like I was keeping score. So I stayed quiet and told myself it didn't matter. What I didn't know was that Lily had taken the lie much further. At family dinners I wasn't invited to, she had been telling relatives that I didn't even come home when Mom was in the hospital. She told them I sent a card. She told them she handled everything alone while I stayed in Seattle focused on my career. The lies spread through my extended family like slow poison, and I had no idea it was happening. Cousins I had been close to stopped calling. Aunts who used to send birthday cards went silent. I thought everyone was just busy. I didn't realize they had been told I abandoned my mother when she needed me most. 4 years before everything came crashing down, I received an invitation to a charity gala benefiting hospital workers. It was relevant to my field, the kind of networking event I usually forced myself to attend. I almost skipped it. Then I saw the guest list included someone named Daniel Mitchell from Morrison Technologies. I had heard of Morrison Technologies, a major tech company worth billions. I assumed it was a different Daniel. The name Mitchell was common enough. It wasn't a different Daniel. I saw him across the ballroom, and even in a suit, he had that same flannel shirt energy I remembered from the hospital cafeteria. When our eyes met, his whole face changed. He smiled like he had been waiting to see me again. He walked over and asked if I had figured out the answer yet. I laughed and told him I was still working on it. We talked all night. I learned that he had founded Morrison Technologies 15 years earlier, that he was technically a billionaire, but lived like a middle-class engineer because money was a tool, not a personality. He still drove the same old Camry he bought when his company was 3 guys in a garage. He wore flannel because his late father had been a carpenter, and it reminded him of building things together on Saturday mornings. He remembered details from our hospital conversation. He asked about my work, my dreams, the things that frustrated me. He actually listened. He actually saw me. I had spent my entire life feeling invisible, and this man looked at me like I was the only person in the room. Our relationship developed slowly over the next year. Coffee dates turned into long walks. Long walks turned into weekends cooking dinner together and talking until midnight. I didn't tell my family about Daniel, at first because it was new and fragile. Later, because I had learned that sharing good things with my family meant watching those things get diminished or stolen. Daniel understood. He had his own complicated history. He never pushed me to introduce him before I was ready. By 3 years before the party, we were serious. By 2 years, we were discussing marriage. 1 week before my mother's 60th birthday, we married quietly on a beach in Maine. Just 12 close friends, sunset vows, no drama. I didn't invite my mother or my sister. I told myself it was because they would make it about themselves. The deeper truth was that I didn't trust them with my happiness. 6 months before the party, while I was living in quiet joy with my new husband Lily, was scrolling through a mutual friend's Instagram. She saw a photo of me at a charity event, standing next to a man. The caption mentioned the Morrison Foundation. Lily didn't recognize Daniel, but something about how I looked in that photo triggered her curiosity. I looked relaxed, happy, younger somehow. She took a screenshot of his face and searched online. She found the Morrison Foundation website and the founder's bio, Daniel Morrison, CEO of Morrison Technologies. She searched his net worth, $2.3 billion. Lily sat in her apartment, the one my mother still helped pay for, and felt her world shift. Quiet, invisible. I don't need anything. Rachel was dating a billionaire. Her first emotion wasn't happiness for me. It was panic. If I married this man, I would no longer be the one who gave without receiving. I would be the one with power. And Lily couldn't let that happen. Over the next 6 months, she tried to reach Daniel directly. She sent an email to his company, expressing interest in opportunities. She showed up at a tech mixer his company sponsored, trying to get close to him. She even tried to bring up his name with me casually, asking if I worked with someone named Morrison. I gave her a blank look because I knew Daniel by his middle name. She backed off, but she didn't give up. Lily wasn't clever enough to cover her tracks. She used her personal email. She posted about the tech mixer on her own social media. She left evidence everywhere, confident that no one was watching. When her direct approaches failed, she created a backup plan. She started working on our mother. She told Mom that I had been dating someone for a while, but refused to share any details. She said it was like I was ashamed of my own family. Our mother predictably agreed that I had always been so secretive and that it was hurtful. 2 months before the party, Mom called to invite me to her 60th birthday dinner. Lily was planning it at an upscale restaurant called Marcello's. Mom said she wanted both her daughters there, and she wanted me to bring my boyfriend. It was time we all met him. Something about her tone felt wrong, too eager, too interested. But 60 was a milestone, and Daniel had been encouraging me to see my family clearly and decide what relationship I wanted going forward. He told me they couldn't hurt me anymore. I wasn't the invisible girl begging for crumbs. I was a grown woman with my own life. I agreed to attend. I told Daniel that if they were respectful, we would have a nice evening. If they were not, I was done staying silent. I didn't bring documents or plan a confrontation. I simply decided that for the first time in my life, I would not swallow insults with a smile. I walked into that restaurant thinking the worst-case scenario was an awkward dinner. I thought I knew my family's capacity for disappointment. I thought I had seen the full depth of their favoritism. I was wrong. The woman I called my mother was about to show me exactly how little she valued me, and the woman I called my sister was about to reveal that she had been playing a much longer game than I ever imagined. Marcello's was elegant in that old Boston way. White tablecloths and dim lighting, and the kind of quiet that made you lower your voice. Daniel wore a simple navy blazer and khakis, no expensive watch, nothing that signaled wealth. He had driven his old Camry and parked it himself. Anyone looking at him would see a pleasant, ordinary man. My family was already seated. Mom Lily, Aunt Margaret, a few cousins, some church friends. When Mom saw me, she gave me a brief hug, the kind you give an acquaintance. She glanced at Daniel and said, "Oh, this is the boyfriend," without offering her hand. Then she turned to Lily and pulled her into a long embrace, telling her she looked beautiful. I felt that familiar numbness settle over me. Lily hugged me with exaggerated warmth. Her eyes scanned Daniel quickly. The old car outside, the modest clothes. Her smile tightened before she recovered. She already knew who he was. She was acting surprised. But I was too focused on surviving the evening to notice. Dinner unfolded the way it always did. Mom talked about Lily's new business venture, framing another likely failure as entrepreneurial spirit. She asked Daniel about his work. He said he ran a software company. She nodded, unimpressed. Aunt Margaret tried to include me, asking how my job was going. Before I could answer, Mom interrupted. Rachel is always working. She's married to her job. Then Lily asked Daniel which company he ran. He answered honestly, Morrison Technologies. Most of the table didn't react, but Aunt Margaret's eyes widened. She quietly pulled out her phone under the table. Minutes later, Mom excused herself. Margaret followed. When Mom returned, everything had changed. Suddenly, she was touching Daniel's arm when she spoke. Suddenly, she was fascinated by his opinions. Suddenly, she was laughing at things that weren't funny. I had seen my mother perform before, but never like this. After dinner, I got trapped talking to a cousin. Across the room, I saw Mom corner Daniel by the window. They talked for several minutes. I saw Mom pat his arm before walking away, looking satisfied. Later, Lily approached Daniel at the bar. She stood too close, touched his arm, leaned in. Daniel's posture went rigid. He said something brief and walked away. I finally escaped and found Daniel standing alone, jaw tight. I asked what happened. Your mother suggested you're too cold for me. She said Lily would be a better match. Then Lily offered to show me around, making it clear she was offering much more than a tour. I went still. They did what your mother pitched Lily to me. Your sister followed up with a personal offer. I looked across the room. Mom laughing with church friends. Lily whispering to Aunt Margaret. 35 years of silence. 35 years of swallowing insults and making myself small. Something shifted inside me. Not rage. Something quieter. Clarity. They don't know we're married, I said. Daniel said no. They don't know anything about us. No. I think it's time they learned. I walked to where my mother was holding court. Mom, I need to talk to you. Publicly. The table went quiet. Mom looked annoyed. Can't it wait? We're celebrating. No, it can't. I turned to face everyone. I've been told tonight that I'm cold, that Daniel might be happier with someone warmer. Like Lily. Mom's face froze. Lily went pale. So let me clear something up. I took Daniel's hand. Daniel and I got married last week. I raised my left hand, showing my ring. Gasps around the table. We didn't invite family because I knew this would happen. I knew my wedding day would somehow become about Lily. And I was right. I looked at my mother. 10 minutes ago, you told my husband to consider my sister. What kind of mother does that? Mom sputtered. I didn't mean... You meant exactly what you said. I was just too desperate for your approval to hear it. Lily intervened. Rachel, you're overreacting. Mom was being protective. I turned to her. Let's talk about protection. Let's talk about 5 years ago. I pulled out my phone and opened my banking app. Mom, you've spent 5 years telling everyone Lily saved your life. That Lily paid for your surgery. That Rachel barely came home. I showed the screen. A transaction from 5 years ago. Transfer to L. Hayes. $47,000. I sent Lily this money, every dollar I saved in 8 years, so she could pay the hospital while I was in Seattle. I flew home the next day, stayed 3 weeks, managed your recovery medications appointments. I looked at Lily. You told the hospital the money was yours. You told relatives I didn't help. You let Mom believe you saved her life with money you never had. Mom turned to Lily. Is this true? Lily's face crumbled. She couldn't deny it. I was going to tell you, she whispered, but you were so happy thinking I did it. You wanted to be the hero I said. So you made me the villain. Daniel spoke. There's more. The room turned to him. 6 months ago, someone emailed my company expressing interest in opportunities. The email came from Lily Hayes. Boston@gmail.com. He showed his phone. Lily's email, her photo attached. You knew who I was for 6 months, Lily. You researched me, tried to contact me. When that failed, you worked on your mother, telling her to help if Rachel brought someone successful around. Mom looked at Lily. You told me her boyfriend might be better for you. You said I should put in a good word. Was this planned? Lily's voice rose. I was trying to help. Rachel doesn't appreciate what she has. The mask was off. Not a victim, a schemer caught. Mom started crying, reaching for me. I didn't know. Rachel, please. I stepped back. You didn't know Lily was scheming. Fine, but you knew you were telling my boyfriend to consider my sister. That wasn't Lily's manipulation. That was you. For 35 years, I told myself I wasn't trying hard enough. Tonight I understand. You always saw me. You just didn't value what you saw. I took Daniel's hand. I don't need your approval anymore. I'm done being invisible. I turned toward the exit, then paused and looked back. You haven't lost a daughter tonight, Mom. You lost her years ago. You just didn't notice. I walked out into the cold night air, and for the first time I felt light. Behind me, I heard my mother's sobs and my sister's excuses. I didn't care. I had spent 35 years caring. Now I wanted to go home with my husband and begin my real life. But first, the family I left behind had to face consequences. And those consequences were just beginning. I learned later what happened after I left that restaurant. The party didn't recover. Within minutes of my exit, Aunt Margaret stood up from her chair and looked directly at my mother. She said she had always defended Patricia when people said she was too hard on me. She told them they didn't understand, but now she knew she was wrong. She said she was ashamed she had kept silent for so long. Then she walked out without saying goodbye. The church friends exchanged uncomfortable glances. One by one, they made excuses about early mornings and long drives. They gathered their coats and left. No one wished my mother happy birthday. No one touched the cake that sat in the center of the table. Candles, some still unlit. Lily tried to salvage things. She told Mom that I was being dramatic, that I always overreacted, that everything would blow over in a few days. But Mom wasn't listening anymore. She was staring at the door I had walked through, and something was dawning in her eyes. The realization that this time she couldn't rewrite the story. There were too many witnesses, too much evidence, too much truth finally spoken out loud. By 9 o'clock, only Mom and Lily remained in the restaurant, surrounded by uneaten food and empty chairs. The weeks that followed were brutal for my mother. The family network that had always supported her turned against her overnight. Relatives who witnessed the scene told others who weren't there. The story spread through phone calls and group texts and whispered conversations. Patricia tried to set up her younger daughter with her older daughter's husband, and Lily stole $47,000 and took credit for saving her mother's life. By Thanksgiving, my mother wasn't invited to her own brother's dinner. He called and told her they thought it was best if she sat this year out. The church community withdrew just as quickly. My mother had been a pillar of St. Andrew's for decades. She organized fundraisers. She ran the volunteer committee. She was known as a devoted mother with 2 lovely daughters. Now she heard whispers when she walked through the door. The pastor's wife avoided eye contact. She was asked to step back from the volunteer committee temporarily. Her best friend of 25 years, a woman named Janet, called her one evening. Janet said she needed time to process what she had heard. She said she always thought I was just difficult, just cold, just too focused on work to care about family. Now she was wondering what else she had gotten wrong about my mother. For the first time in her life, Patricia was truly alone. If my mother's world crumbled, Lily's imploded completely. Her boyfriend Mark had been at the party. He heard everything. He watched her try to approach Daniel. He watched her lie to our mother's face. He listened to her pretend to be shocked when she had clearly been planning this for months. He broke up with her within the week. He told her he didn't know who she was, but he didn't want to find out. And Mark didn't stay quiet. He told their mutual friends what had happened. Lily's social circle shrank overnight. The professional damage came next. Someone from the party worked in Lily's industry. Word spread through the quiet channels of professional gossip, the LinkedIn messages and coffee break conversations that can make or break a reputation. A job opportunity Lily had been pursuing went cold without explanation. Her current employer started looking at her differently. The financial reality hit hardest. Without Mom's subsidies, and Patricia was too devastated and too financially worried to help anyone anymore, Lily had to pay her own way for the first time in her adult life. Her expensive apartment, her car payment, her credit card debt. She couldn't afford any of it. She moved to a smaller apartment in a worse neighborhood. She picked up extra shifts at work. For the first time in 32 years, she experienced what I had experienced my whole life, being entirely responsible for herself, the identity Lily had built. The golden child, the family favorite, the one who was always chosen, had been constructed on manipulation and lies. Without those lies, she had to face a terrifying question. Who was she really? What was she worth if she couldn't charm her way through life? She didn't have an answer. Finding one would take years. 2 months after the party, Aunt Margaret called me. Her voice was serious. She said she needed to tell me something she should have told me years ago. We met for coffee at a quiet place near my office. She was nervous, fidgeting with her cup, avoiding my eyes. She said my mother had made her promise never to tell me the truth about my father's accident. But after what happened at the party, she couldn't keep this secret anymore. I braced myself. I thought I knew the story. Dad worked too hard, fell asleep at the wheel. A tragic accident. The truth was worse. Margaret told me that 7 years before my father died, my mother had borrowed $80,000 to start a small catering business. The business failed within a year. They were drowning in debt, close to losing the house. My father took on extra shifts, then more shifts. He worked his regular job during the day. He picked up night shifts at a warehouse. He did weekend electrical jobs for anyone who would pay. He slept 4 hours a night for 3 years. The night he died, he was driving to a night shift. He fell asleep at the wheel because he had been awake for 22 hours straight. Margaret's voice was barely above a whisper. She said my mother had always blamed herself, but instead of dealing with that guilt, she redirected it. I looked so much like my father. Same eyes, same quiet strength. Every time she looked at me, she saw the man who died paying off her mistake. Loving Lily was easy because Lily looked like her. Loving me meant facing what she had done. I sat in silence for a long time, processing what I had just heard. She didn't just favor Lily, I said finally. She punished me for looking like him. Margaret nodded, tears filling her eyes. Yes, I think so. And no one told me. For 27 years, we thought we were protecting you. We were wrong. I'm sorry, Rachel. I'm so sorry. I went home that night and told Daniel everything. Over the following weeks, I worked through it with a therapist because healthy coping matters, and I had spent too many years pretending I was fine when I wasn't. I made clear decisions about my future. For my mother, I didn't block her number, but I didn't answer either. Not yet. Maybe not ever. I sent one text message. I need time. A lot of time. Don't contact me. I'll reach out if and when I'm ready. For Lily, I chose complete cutoff. I blocked her number, her email, her social media. She tried to reach me through mutual connections, and I shut down every avenue. Some betrayals are mistakes born from weakness. Lily's betrayal was calculated, planned, sustained over years. That kind of betrayal doesn't deserve a second chance. For myself, I focused on building my life, my marriage, my career, the chosen family I was creating with Daniel, and loyal friends and colleagues who actually respected me. I told Daniel one night that I used to think I needed my family's love to be whole. But now I understood. I was always whole. I was just looking for validation in a place where it was never available. 3 years passed. I built a life that had nothing to do with the family I was born into. I stopped checking if they were watching. I stopped wondering if they were proud. I was finally free. Then, one autumn morning, a letter arrived, handwritten. My mother's shaky script on the envelope. I held it for 3 hours before I opened it. Some letters are just words. Some letters are doors. I wasn't sure I wanted to walk through this one. The letter was 3 pages long, handwritten in my mother's careful script. She began by saying she didn't expect me to read it, that she would understand if I had already thrown it away. She told me she had been seeing a therapist for 2 years, not because she wanted to, but because her doctor made her go after her blood pressure became dangerous. She kept going because she needed to understand how she became someone who could do what she did to me. The therapist helped her see things she had spent decades denying. How she blamed me for looking like my father. How she punished me for reminding her of her worst mistake. How she let Lily manipulate her because it was easier than facing the truth. She wrote that she knew Thomas died because of her, because she borrowed money they couldn't afford, and he worked himself to death paying it back. She had known this for 27 years. She was too much of a coward to admit it, so she hid from it. And she hid from me because I was his ghost. She said she wasn't writing to ask for forgiveness. She knew she didn't deserve it. She was writing because she owed me an apology that was 3 decades overdue. She apologized for all of it. For favoring Lily, for ignoring my achievements, for missing my graduation, for believing lies about me, for trying to give my husband to my sister, for making me feel invisible. She said she was a terrible mother to me, that I deserved so much better. She wrote that if I never wanted to see her again, she would accept that. But if there was ever a day when I was ready to hear her say this in person, she would be waiting. She ended by saying she loved me. She knew those words sounded meaningless after everything, but they were true. She just showed it in the worst possible way. I read that letter several times over several days. I showed it to Daniel. I discussed it with my therapist. My feelings were complicated. There was no simple reconciliation. I told Daniel I believed she was sorry. I just didn't know if sorry was enough. He said it doesn't have to be enough, and I didn't have to decide right now. 6 months later, I finally responded with a phone call. "Mom," I said, "I got your letter." Her voice shook. "Rachel, I didn't think you'd call. I wasn't sure I would either. I'm not ready to have a relationship with you. I don't know if I ever will be, but I'm willing to meet once, in person, to hear your apology." We met at a cafe in neutral territory, a small town neither of us had any connection to. She looked older than I remembered, smaller. Her hands shook when she held her coffee. She didn't make excuses. She simply said she was sorry for everything. She failed me as a mother. She failed my father's memory. She failed the family he trusted her to protect. I listened until she finished. Then I said I heard her. I believed she was sorry, but sorry doesn't undo 35 years. I wasn't punishing her, I just couldn't pretend those years didn't happen. "I know," she whispered. "I don't hate you, Mom. I just don't trust you, and I don't know if I ever will." We parted with a brief embrace. It wasn't warmth, but it wasn't war either. Lily was a different story. She tried everything to reach me. Letters, emails, messages through mutual friends. She even showed up at my office once and security escorted her out. Her letters were apologetic but defensive. She wrote about how I had to understand her perspective, how she was always in my shadow. I didn't respond, not once. Daniel asked why I was willing to meet Mom, but not Lily. I told him that Mom was weak. She let herself be manipulated because it was easier than facing truth. That's sad but understandable. Lily was different. Lily was strategic. She stole my money and made sure I got no credit. She lied to relatives for years. She spent 6 months planning to take my husband. That's not weakness. That's choice. I forgive people who make mistakes out of weakness. I don't forgive people who hurt me on purpose and only apologize when they get caught. I wasn't angry when I said this. I was certain. Some doors are meant to stay closed. I heard through relatives that Lily eventually moved to another city. She was apparently in therapy. She had a modest job, a quieter life. I hoped she found peace, genuinely, but I hoped she found it far away from me. My own life at 39 was nothing like I imagined when I was that invisible girl trying to earn my mother's love. I was now vice president of operations at my hospital system, a promotion earned through my skills. Daniel and I lived in a house by the ocean. Not a mansion, a home. We had started trying for children. I volunteered with a support group for women recovering from family manipulation. I told my story. Other women cried and said they thought they were the only ones. I told them they weren't. And it gets better, but only if you stop waiting for the people who hurt you to change. I had become the person I needed when I was younger. One quiet Tuesday evening, Daniel and I sat at our kitchen table. Simple pasta, candles, the sound of waves outside. He asked if I had any regrets. I said I regretted the 35 years I spent trying to earn something that was never available. All that energy wasted on people who couldn't see me. But I don't regret who I became. I don't regret walking away. I don't regret building this. I looked around at our modest home, the man who saw me when I was invisible to everyone else. I used to think the worst thing in the world was being the daughter who wasn't chosen. Now I know the truth. The worst thing would have been spending my whole life waiting for that choice to change. My mother and I have had coffee 3 more times since that first meeting. It's not a relationship. It's more like supervised visitation with the past. She's trying. I'm watching. I don't know if we'll ever have more than that. I've made peace with not knowing. My sister Lily is somewhere on the other side of the country, living a life I know nothing about. I hope she's changed, but I hope she stays where she is. Some families are built on blood. Some are built on choice. I spent 35 years trying to belong to the first kind. Now I know I was always meant for the second. Daniel, my friends, the women in my support group who understand what it means to rebuild from nothing. They're my family now, not because I gave up on blood, but because blood gave up on me long before I walked away. I used to believe I wasn't enough. Now I know the truth. I was always enough. I was just surrounded by people who needed me to believe otherwise. The greatest revenge isn't making them pay. It's building a life so full that you forget to check if they're watching. They lost me. That's their consequence. I found myself. That's my reward. And the daughter who was never chosen. She finally chose herself. Once you stop waiting to be chosen, you realize you never needed anyone's permission to be whole. You were whole all along. You just needed to believe it. Thank you for staying with Rachel's story until the end. Her journey teaches us something important that many of us need to hear. You cannot earn love from people who have already decided not to give it. No amount of sacrifice, achievement, or silence will change someone who benefits from keeping you small. The healthiest thing you can do is stop waiting to be chosen and start choosing yourself. Set boundaries without guilt. Walk away from relationships that drain you. Build a family from people who actually see your worth. Remember that forgiveness is a gift you give yourself, but trust must be earned. You are allowed to forgive someone and still keep them at a distance. Your peace matters more than their comfort. If this story resonated with you, please subscribe to our channel and hit the notification bell so you never miss our next video. We would love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Have you ever experienced something similar with your family? What helped you find your own peace? Share your story with us.
Đúng rồi, nói sau này hoặc là người ta biết thì em chỉ cho.